This is the
Independent
Filmmaker's Guide
from Framework Productions.
Framework
Productions.
Hi, and welcome to the Independent Filmmaker's Guide mini-episode. I'm your host, James Allerdyce, speaking with the director and the cast of the feature film, I'll Meet You There. If you haven't heard our main episode on I'll Meet You There, check it out. In it, we get in-depth about the process of pre-production, production, and post-production, and that journey. But right now, we're going to speak with the cast about their experience working with this director. Thanks for being here. Would you mind starting by introducing yourselves and the characters you play in the film?
I'm Faran Tahir and I play Majid.
I'm Nikita Chawani and I play Dua.
I am Sheetal Sheth and I play Shonali.
I'm Nitin Madan. I play Jafar, the Imam of the mosque.
I'm Aram Parveen Bilal and I'm the writer-director of I'll Meet You There.
Is this the first time all of you have been back together since rapping, or?
It's pretty sad, yeah.
Well,
we had a rap party, but after that, yeah. We're
happy to be at least the vehicle where you all can see each other. I'd love to hear a little bit about these characters.
For Dua, what I really related to the most was this clash between two worlds, and kind of how she's young, she's still very impressionable, and her full identity has not been created yet, because at 17, I mean, whose is? So I grow up with my father and in this very modern American lifestyle that I'm used to. And then suddenly my grandfather comes into town, and he represents a whole different set of values that I'm curious about and that I've missed because I've never really been exposed to them. So it becomes this world of what's right and what's wrong, and finding myself between these two very different sets of values.
I think all the characters in the film, we are struggling to find our identity and find a balance within our souls of who we are and truly accept the person that we truly are. And I think that's the biggest struggle for all of these characters. For Majid, it manifests itself because, first of all, he's bringing up a teenage daughter by himself, which has its own challenges. At the same time, he is a cop and working undercover for something which I don't want to reveal at this point, but it is something that actually challenges his own identity and creates a certain amount of guilt in him. Coupled with that, his own issues with his own father also come into play. So all of these things are really, I think Majid's journey is not only to do right by others, but also accept who he really is and celebrate that. And I think that's the biggest challenge for Majid in general.
Yeah, so as the imam of this local mosque, I find myself in a place where I am trying to keep the community together and struggle with the duality of the society around us, who views us with suspicion rather than as just people who want to live their lives in a day-to-day manner, and to keep that balance within the community where I want them to continue doing their spiritual/religious duties while surviving amongst people who view even their charitable work as suspicious. So it's a balance that one wants to maintain as a migrant, a first-generation migrant in a community where you're trying to not only come off as victims or perpetrators, but just as normal individuals who want to live their lives, just like every other American family.
Yes. And for Shonali, I feel like for her, I think she's mostly in, relationships with Majid and Dua, where you see her. And I think she's a catalyst for both of them. I think that she's probably the most kind of settled in who she is, and she ends up becoming somebody who allows Majid to kind of move forward in the way that I think everyone knows he needs to, but has had a hard time. And with Dua as well, kind of finding her own space and figuring out what that means to her. I think that, but it's hard for Shonali because obviously, she doesn't want to step on anybody's toes, and her friend was his ex-wife and she does love this man. And so it becomes a little bit complicated, but I do think that she very much serves as a catalyst for Majid and Dua to kind of find their way.
So can any of you just jump in speaking about what it was like to play, be it a tight-knit community or a tight-knit family?
So this was my first experience being a lead role in a feature film. And for me, it was new to be on a set of people who were just like me in some ways. I mean, I felt like instantly it was a family. And I crave more of that now, but it was amazing how the chemistry was kind of already there with everyone. And you didn't really have to work at that relationship of the family members, especially how I felt with everyone close to me, my father, my grandfather, my director. There was never a barrier that I have found times before. And in that way, it was becoming this character and relating to the other characters was so much easier for me than it ever has been before. And just being around a community of people who represent you and likewise, it was definitely a unique experience that I think most people of color just in the industry haven't, I hope they get to experience that.
I think on top of that, I think for me, it was just such a wonderful experience just working with these people. I mean, I met Nikita, was going to play my daughter, and I just felt like from the get-go, I didn't have to try too hard to connect. I think I just trusted that there was a connection, which there was. And I think credit also goes to Iram for getting the right people together at the right time and creating a script, which actually lends itself to not feeling shy of vulnerability in a way. And I think that's a beautiful thing. The funny story is that Sheetal and I worked together. When was this, Sheetal? No.
Oh my God, it was my first movie in 1998.
Right? And we played brother and sister, so it was a little bit of a shift. It was called ABCD. Yeah. So it was a little bit of a shift from playing brother and sister to playing like a love interest. It was a bit of a all right, this is a whole other kind of an energy. But anyway, I mean, I think.
We live in Game of Thrones world, Faran.
Oh, exactly. No, but I just felt that I think from the person who played my father to every character, there was a wonderfully warm feeling that we wanted to make this particular project the best that we could, and you could feel that in pretty much everybody.
And I think Iram created space for us to, when we all kind of got together before we even filmed, we got together a few times. And like Faran and I, because I know him and I love him, so there's no issue there. And Nikita's so easy to love, and everybody is part of the family. Like you instantly feel this connection, but you have also this time to just kind of hang out and get to know each other a little bit, which adds the layers, I think, of the history of a relationship. And Iram knew that was important. I think that kind of stuff you can't script, you can't write, you just have to live. And she did, she made the time for that. And I think that says a lot.
I remember my vision of what my history was with these characters was very much aligned with everyone else's. And I also remember one time we had a rehearsal where we went to, I think it was Faran's apartment.
This was an in-character dinner.
Yes, the in-character dinner where we all went to Faran's apartment, and we had to enter as our characters. And then I remember halfway through, we all just dropped it and we're just totally being ourselves and hanging out.
It was interesting for me because we did not have a rehearsal at all. And obviously, we'll speak of the logistics of production and how quickly they shot this film and all of those things. But I actually found myself in a mosque, which, I have, the last time I was in a mosque was sightseeing in Jama Masjid in New Delhi or in Delhi. But it wasn't the environment that I was like immediately comfortable in. But, you go for a few days within a group that already knows each other really well. So it doesn't start off like you're all ready to go immediately. But it was just something about, first of all, when I read the script, I mean, I was just floored, and I was just looking forward to being a part of it and going in there and playing. But when I was there and when I started working, it was almost like an experience of reality to me. And Idam's, there were moments when Idam just came, whispered in my ear, and it just made everything seem to work so much better. I mean, there was just one point where she just goes, just follow your instinct. And it's such an easy direction, and it's something that you, as an actor, would always remember. But in that moment, you need somebody to just whisper it in your ear.
I hear a lot about being connected right off the bat. Iram, what was preparation and rehearsal like, and how long did you rehearse for with the actors, and what was the experience?
When we were making, first of all, this is like a breath of fresh air. I don't know how these guys feel, but I have been waiting to talk about this movie. So I'm just hearing everybody. It's like, it's therapy for me right now. I've been holding back tears, just like hearing, because it takes me back to the time. This particular film I've been working on for years. So as far as pre-production as a writer director, all my heads of departments were ready to go for like 2 years before we shot, because we lost the investment twice. So it has particular set of sort of jinxing bad luck with it, which is why I think it's going to be even sweeter when it comes out. So as far as the pre-production in terms of shot lists and DPs and production design, we were all on it. And because we knew it was going to be made for like a lot less money than we want to, that was incredible. And that's what opened up space for me to talk to these guys. But, in the world we're in, casting in indie films, you literally don't even know who your lead is going to be like till the week before. But thankfully, Faran and I were connected before. He'd actually done a couple of table reads because I was considering him. He really had shown interest that he wanted to do the project. And it would have been, I just wasn't sure, because I wanted to have everything cast in terms of chemistry. So to have your point, like, it was almost like a parallel. I had ideas of who I wanted to play characters, but at the same time, it's availability. Do they want to do it? Is this time? Blah, everything has to work at the same time. I did want to have people who had some background in theater and who were just serious artists, because I think when you're doing an independent film, A, you don't have time for divas, and B, you need people who really sort of respect the craft for what it is. And I feel like theatrical people, just maybe it's my presumption, but I feel like there's a different sort of approach to the material. And, of course, Faran is very sort of known and respected. Sheetal has done so much. These guys have, and Nikita blew me away. Nikita was the only person, and Nitin. So Nikita and Nitin were found through casting. Sheetal and Faran I knew on my own. And like you said, it's a small community, so you kind of know a lot of the players. But from, I watched probably 90 tapes, and Nikita specifically. And I'll talk about Nikita first. Nikita just stood out from the beginning. And it was always like, I just kept going back to her. And then, it was between her and this other person. And I knew it was her. And I was a little concerned about dance, because dance is a big part of it, and then training. But then she ended up having training in the sort of dance I wanted in the film, which is Kathak. So it all sort of came together that way. So I learned as a director, because before I would try and rehearse the scenes, and then they become stale sometimes. So I did a lot of contextual rehearsal. Nitin, on purpose, we actually didn't rehearse with you, because you had everybody in this foursome. So one person who's really missing here and who I wish was here is Baba. Because it's the three of them and then Shonali, they form the family, so to speak. So everybody else, it's okay if there's discomfort. And particularly with Nitin, I think the awkwardness was good because it played on screen. So it was actually, it behooved my telling of the story to just keep him distant.
How long did you rehearse with them? Was there a rule of thumb? Did you rehearse, a day for each person before each scene, or did you just rehearse right before the scene? How did the process go?
We did one table read in the beginning, and in our production office, like living room. And then we did, then I had Sheetal and Nikita. So Shonali and Dua separately. And then, of course, I had Majid, Dua, and Baba separately. I had Dua and Baba separately. So I did their separate rehearsals. And then I had Majid. And Faran was coming in from another shoot. So I had to, after the first week of shoot, then it was a lot of the house scenes. And so I had Majid and Baba together for a session, just chatting and talking, breaking bread and then talking about
Well,
the
to
issues.
which I would add that Kavi Khan, who plays Baba, I've known him for my entire life. I mean, he's a father figure to me in my real life. So connecting with him on that level was just natural. It was just me and him being who we have been all our lives. So that's also just the beauty of the casting, that it put people together who either very quickly created trust or already had the trust. And half of the game in acting is trust.
And it was very important in terms of authenticity of language and culture to cast somebody from Pakistan for me. And, people were trying to push people here, I just haven't found somebody in that age who is language authentic, is authentic in terms of language in Urdu. And then also to say, Kavi Khan has won a Lifetime Achievement Award in film, television, radio, and theater in Pakistan. So he's incredible. So that weekend was actually a huge help for me, because Faran and Kavi uncle, we were just talking through the scenes and the Urdu dialogue. And so we were trying to make whatever was comfortable for them. And so I rewrote a couple of the scenes based on their input in terms of dialogue.
While watching the film, there's definitely different perspectives happening, and you feel that in the actors in the filmmaking. Some are much more dramatic. Others start off a bit more whimsical and then go into that drama. So I was actually wondering if you did shoot in order, and if you didn't, how the actors approached jumping back and forth, say, from a college party scene to, did you ever have to go from a college party scene straight into something further on that was much more dramatic?
Well, if you thought we shot in order, we did.
Okay. Great.
No, of course you didn't.
Has anybody ever had the luxury to shoot anything in order? I mean, I don't think I don't know anybody who's shot in order ever, period. Unless it's impossible.
But to your point, to jog your memory, Nikita, your first day of shoot, you probably remember. Please tell.
Yeah, I do. I remember. I mean, this was a very new experience for me when it came to, I have done smaller parts in feature films, but I've never been a lead. So, and coming from a theater background when everything is in order, and it was, I was surprised at how well I was able to jump into it without thinking too much. And I think that's always my biggest struggle, is overthinking things. And I think, again, this just has to go back to my trust, my trust with Iram and my trust with the community of people we had. And the connection that I had to the script, that I never felt like I wasn't, now, of course, each year you grow as an actor and you're like, oh, maybe I would have done this differently or this differently with everything that you go back to. But I felt really confident about what I wanted. And I think that really helped me jump in and not do things in an order, because I didn't feel like I needed to go through a certain scene to reach the emotional or the stake of a scene that comes after it, if we shot that before. Also, I just really focused on the people that I was in my scenes with, and just listening to Iram, because I trusted her with my whole self. So,
that's the work though, right? As an actor, that's our work. You have to figure it out. You have to do all of the work on your own about your emotional journey, your arc, what you need to be doing in each scene. And then you kind of have to trust you've done that work and let it go, so that when you're in the scene, you can live in the moment. But that doesn't come without having done your homework.
Yeah, and I think for different people, I think it's a different process. Iram talked about, having theater as the base for some of us. And that's how I look at it. That because of the theater training, you can create your arc, what your point A is and what your point Z is. So you do all or most of your work figuring all of that out. But then when you get into actually shooting, then I think in that moment, you have to stop looking at the arc and start looking at the matrix of the character, because that opens you up to making different choices as long as you get to where you need to go. But it opens you up to not getting so married to one choice that you're not honoring other people that you're working with, and also not looking at different possibilities of getting there. So I think that's what it does. So once you create that arc for yourself in your head, then it's easy to chop it up because you know where your hooks are emotionally and physically, what will trigger what for you. And you can do that. So I think it's all about good preparation in the end. Then you can chop it up any which way you want, and it's totally fine.
And it allows you to kind of be in the moment with who you're with and really receive what you're receiving rather than being in your head. And I found that to be the case because I was working with such incredible people that I was really able to just let go and just get what I was getting. And things came up that I didn't even know would. And that's the best part. That's why you're doing it.
There were multiple scenes where after calling cut, I was crying and they were crying. We were all crying together. There were even scenes where they weren't crying and I was crying. So, it speaks to this cast has given me so much. I learned so much in terms of just the human condition, having shot this film. And I think that I remember our first day we were shooting in Staten Island and it was raining. And I just had one take with my director's monitor and it broke. Actually, I didn't even get to have one take. Like apparently it broke before we called action. And this was Nikita's first day where she was playing a monumental scene about her dance story. It was insane. And we didn't have the money to have a ballet because her training is more Kathak, a ballet sort of choreographer. So a student of mine from LA, who I taught in film, but happened to be like a dancer, he flew because he just wanted to be in the movie. And he gave his like day rate for the flight and ended up training her for that scene, whatever little bit he could, coupled with, it was it was such a sort of everybody giving their heart in and making this piece work.
I think it's so great that we have such a wide range of experience in your cast. Nikita, you mentioned that this was your very first feature film. And Sheetal and Faran, you've obviously been in many, many movies and TV shows. What's the difference between working on a big budget versus a smaller budget film? And specifically to start with you, Faran, how is it different than working on a big Hollywood franchise like Iron Man or Star Trek?
I think part of it is that, of course, some advantages of being in a big budget movie because they can do anything they want. They can make rain whenever they want to make it. And you know what I mean, Simon? So there is that side to it. So you have whatever you need, you can have, which makes it easy for you to do what you're doing. But on the flip side of it, the beauty of independent filmmaking is that you really have to be creative and you have to have all your creative jets firing at the same time. Because sometimes, again, making that parallel of theater versus indie movies, I think they're very close because sometimes you don't have the luxury of shooting doing 37 takes of something. I have found that most of my growth has happened when I've done projects like this as an actor. I think it feeds my soul more. Yeah, a big budget movie feeds my wallet more, but that's a whole other thing. But this feeds my soul. And I think that's why I think it's important that we keep doing it. Because I think that's the real cutting edge movie making is happening in indie movies. It's not happening in big budget movies.
Well, it also just reinforces that you don't really need all that stuff. Like, yes, you need it if you're making Iron Man. Obviously, you need it for certain parts that you do, but there is so much, I personally think there is so much waste and excess in a lot of these budgets because I go onto these sets and I'm like, oh my God, but I've also done a ton of it. I've done mostly independent movies. And,
you've also produced. You're a writer-producer.
Yeah. So I've seen all the sides of it. And so, when I'm producing, I'm like, I wish I had just a little bit more. If I could have like that 10% contingency budget of that other movie, I could make a whole movie, And that is the problem with the huge disparity between what you have access to. And that's my biggest issue is like the access and the opportunities that you want to kind of give the world of creation, and when you're working in an independent movie, I've worked on, this was like, for an independent movie, it had heads of departments. I've worked on movies where like there were no heads of departments and there's just like one person for each department and, skeleton crews where there's like 15 people and I've done my own continuity and my own wardrobe. And like, you just have to decide what's important, and if you want to tell the story or not. And thank goodness I've also worked on films where like the cast doesn't get that, and the crew doesn't get that. And so if you don't have the right kind of hearts making the movie that you want to make and realize what it's about, and it's something bigger than yourself, then you're lost. But thankfully in this situation, Aaron put together a great band of misfits. We all wanted to tell the story, and I think we were all of like minds and hearts.
I certainly would agree. I think it came through, as an audience member, I saw it 100%.
The other great thing about being in an independent set like this one was basically when you put on your wardrobe is when you become the character. It's that whole thing about being amongst people in your wardrobe, and then you are you in the real world or you are the character in the real world rather than sitting in your own little, trailer or enclosure or whatever that might be with your thoughts. And obviously everybody works differently. Actors have different methods, different prep. But I think it's great exercise to be able to do that, to just be the character while you're around crafties, for example.
We're just all hands-on, and that's the only way you can make your day.
An incredible experience watching you all. So thank you for your work, and thanks for being on the show.
Thank you
for having us.
Thank you very much.
Can't wait to share it with the world.
Filmmaking is a collaborative experience, and so is this podcast. Follow us on Instagram at framework_productions for upcoming episode announcements, and leave your questions in the comments for our future guests. The first 10 to comment are immediately entered to win a monthly prize. Please take a second to subscribe so you know about future episodes, and leave a review. It really does help us. For more information about today's guest, visit independentfilmmakersguide.com to see visuals, diagrams, and to see links to the episode in video and article form. IFG is a community, and we want to help you in your filmmaking process.
Hi, I'm Ryan Guess, and I'm a filmmaker based out of New York, and I'm reading the credits. This episode of IFG is produced by Framework Productions, directed by Matt Mundy, edited by Audrey Rae McHale, and hosted by James Allerdyce. The music is by Glassboy. Find his music on freemusicarchive.org. Thanks for listening.